Welcome, Bitcoin friends, to a beautiful morning. Buenos dias, Kevin Opar. Kevin Opar with the good international morning salutations. There you go. So, very rainy, but definitely, I can't see through the clouds, but there's enough light for me to be 99.9999% certain the sun is up. I checked. Bitcoin is running just fine. Sun's up. Bitcoin's running. Nothing else for us to do. Have a cup of coffee and talk about all the crazy news. P-Man Van says, beautiful day to stack some sats. I agree. Justin says, Guten Morgen. Yeah, my father is from Germany and mein Deutsch ist nicht gut. But I did spend quite a bit of time on the French part of, well, we'll talk about where all the coup in Germany might have happened. Right? Morning, Steve Paris. So, as you all know, we love to start the day with the fakest story we could find in the news. Just the fakest, right? It doesn't all, fake is one version, right? Out of context, omitted truths. We love all that stuff, right? We love it all. And sometimes irony is just enough for us to decide this is the fakest story. And so we've got it, right? We've got it. So it turns out that the staff at the European Central Bank, because they're bureaucrats, right? It's not everyone is out there as an elite. Not a lot of these people are even very wealthy, right? They're just bureaucrats working for a bank. And it turns out that all of their troubles are very similar to all of everyone else's troubles. So the ECB staff today said they're not happy. They're not happy at all with the pay hike that they are scheduled to have. It doesn't cover inflation, they say. It doesn't cover inflation. So, I wonder if we can at all instill a bit of normal capitalistic practices in this bureaucracy that is supposedly running European capitalism, right? So how about this for a little adage for those folks? You break it, you buy it. You break it, you buy it, right? It's yours. You're going to deal with this stuff now, European Central Bank staff. You break it, you buy it, buggers. Another one that was pretty close to my fakest news of the day, or biggest waste of time, or biggest irony, or stupidest thing, or result only clown world and not an actual human can produce. And here it is. This one's pretty good. So, San Francisco has become a real shithole. Like, it's falling apart, right? I don't even go anymore. I can't go anymore. I haven't been in a couple of years. It's awful, right? The last time I went, it was to visit a major wallet provider, Bread Wallet. Their headquarters were in the Tenderloin, and the part where they were was really beautiful. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful urban environments in the world, except it was filled with junkies and human shit. My wife was with me, and she complained, and she said, I didn't know why is it like in Europe where they don't pick up the dog poo, like in France sometimes, they don't pick up dog poo on the streets. Why is there dog poo everywhere? And I said, wife, that's not dog poo. Don't confuse it with dog poo. There aren't that many dogs in the city. So what is San Francisco, with all of its troubles, focused on, right? So London Breed. We've even mentioned London Breed in a good light on this show. We've talked about how she learned quickly from Michael Schellenberger and has done some stuff to go against sort of liberal doctrine and help fix San Francisco, but I actually help people with health, right? So she has all kinds of ideas that Schellenberger gave her. But alas, she's fallen into a trap, and it looks like she's going to put some city resources into the following problem. So San Francisco building inspectors are launching an investigation into reports that Twitter has converted several office rooms in the headquarters into sleeping quarters for employees. The quote is, "We need to make sure the building is being used as intended." So they're going to go into Elon's office, and I guess when he said it's hardcore, he wants them to sleep there. And he said, not only is it not a work from home situation, it might be a not sleep at home situation. It might be a sleep at work situation. So he went the opposite of work from home. He went sleep at work. And they're not going to let him get away with it, apparently. So he goes right into the story, and he says, so the city of San Francisco attacks companies providing beds for tired employees instead of making sure kids are safe from fentanyl. Where are your priorities, London breed? And this is in reference, and he retweeted a San Francisco Chronicle story where a young baby was playing in a park and actually ingested fentanyl. There's so much fentanyl, and it's in everything, that the baby got some of it into him and almost died. Right? So I guess the fentanyl in the parks doesn't really matter. Whether or not Elon Musk has brought bunk beds for engineers into Twitter, you know, because what will we do if the building is not being used as intended? I mean, geez, what are they going to do, right? So that's something else. So those were the fakest stories I could find for the day. You know, a bit of irony, a bit of fakery, pretty good stuff. But today we're going to cover a bunch of news stories, but the form I'm going to take, the order I'm going to take, actually comes from a Marc Andreesen thread that he shared yesterday, right? So Marc Andreesen, for Bitcoiners who don't know this, right? I'll give you a brief, the Coles notes on Marc Andreesen, but also why he's important to Bitcoin and why a certain cohort of Bitcoiners think really highly of him. And I'm one of them, and I'll explain why. So Marc Andreesen, if you didn't know, is one of the scions of VC in Silicon Valley. A16Z is him, right? He's the A, Marc Andreesen. And he made his original fortune by inventing the web browser, Netscape Navigator, which many people copied, but he went into the VC game after and sort of invested in everyone, Google, all that stuff, right? So super rich guy, super successful. But since all the trouble in America began, in his mind, let's say 2016 on, he's taken it upon himself to become a big reader and reading everything on democracy and politics. And so I've been waiting for him to sort of come back to the fold and weigh in and participate in American democracy, let's call it, or even global democracy, or whatever we were going to call this shift that we're in. So the reason Marc Andreesen is so popular with Bitcoiners is because years ago, before there was a Bitcoin standard, before there was all the content that Bitcoiners have produced in the past few years, before there was all this analysis, before there was all this insight into stuff, there wasn't a lot out there. There was the white paper, which we all read, obviously, and that is good enough. I'm not going to say you even need more than the white paper necessarily. But there was a piece written in 2014 in the New York Times by Marc Andreesen, and it was called Why Bitcoin Matters. And as I said, before there was any book, that article was probably the most passed around piece amongst the early Bitcoin crowd about what it was we were doing. And it was a massive psychological vote of confidence, of encouragement, to know that that's how he thought and that's how we thought. And I can't undersell how important that piece was for a lot of people, because when he wrote it, Bitcoin was already undergoing one of its first crises. It was a little bit like, it was the 2014 period where the market was tanking, already tanking. And this was not in the run-up to the original $1,000 Bitcoin exchange rate with dollars threshold. This was as it was coming down. And that it was written when it was written helped fuel a lot of consistent thoughts through one of the biggest crashes that I've ever experienced. I mean, whenever anyone references, I didn't even notice the 2018 or 2019 bear market because it paled in comparison to what we had experienced before. When I entered the industry, it was dead. I mean, no, everybody laughed at us. They thought we were so stupid. It was never going to come back. We were just waiting for it to fall. It feels much worse. I know people have said, oh, you know, this FTX thing is worse than Mt. Gox if you're in crypto, maybe if you're in crypto, right? Maybe for the crypto people. But for Bitcoiners, you know, it's bad. It's bad. I see the industry having trouble. There's human capital considerations, layoffs. You don't want to see any of that stuff. People are definitely not stacking as much as they used to. They're definitely selling in order to survive. We've all been there before. And so what he wrote back then was really important. So today, as I mentioned, he's on this quest. He's shared his reading list, for example, everything he's read. It's hundreds of books. It's everything that you would need in order to be able to not miss anything when you're trying to account for the complicated times we're in. But he put out a list of 15 white pills, 15 white pills, so unrelated to Bitcoin. But these 15 white pills, to me, were all covered and checked by Bitcoin. So we can do it today. We can actually look through the news, and I put them all here. So these are the 15 points. I just use these little notes. I'll explain what each of the points are, but each of these notes is just a sort of reference so you understand the context, right? So the first pill, white pill number 1, he says, the hysterics have only a negative vision to sell. The hysterics have only a negative vision to sell. Narrow, pinched, sanctimonious, endlessly critical, resentful, bitter, demoralizing, depressing. No normal person actually wants to live like that. So he's just talking about all the fighting on Twitter and the crazy people and the moralists and, oh, you're this and you're that, and you're, you know, all the kind of name calling, the ad hominem, the tension, the oh, you're a racist if you don't agree with me, oh, you're Hitler if you don't agree with me, all that stuff, right? So that's really why I did this show. Right? That's why I call it the Breakup. And it's why I'm so bullish on near-term hyper-Bitcoinization. I'm not one of these people who say, oh, maybe in 30 years, if we get some bonds going and like, you know, oh, we'll see. No. The reason we're going through these tensions, it's one of these fourth turning frames, right? We don't even understand how to run our economy anymore. We can't do basic stuff. I tried to buy a coffee at McDonald's yesterday. The store was closed. You could do the drive-through, right? And but you can't go in. But I had ordered on the app, so I couldn't go in to pick up the thing that I said I was going to pick up. And a whole nother sort of, you know, not rich family that didn't have a car, that was working in a nearby construction site, tried to walk over and go to McDonald's. They couldn't go. McDonald's, you can't buy a hamburger in America anymore. It's too complicated. It's too complicated, right? So, and there's big signs up, you know, we'll pay way above minimum wage and all these things. So the reason I even made this show is because I don't think psychologically the dollar is going to allow any perpetuation towards the future, right? It's what I often say on this show. Just imagine what the world would have to look like if all of these fiat people get their way. We're going to live with this massive amount of debt, with systems we don't understand, that no one can organize. Science is broken, right? You can't trust any of this science stuff. They don't come up with anything interesting. I saw a study just yesterday was being shared around about how soy, right? Soy, this is what the study said, right? Soy actually doesn't affect your male testosterone levels, right? So that there's all kinds of names, fancy people behind it, a college behind it, you know, well, what's going on with this study? It took me about 4 seconds to say this is dog shit. First of all, meta-analysis, cancel, right? Meta-analysis, cancel, right? First of all, cancel. But if you want to go further, right? The next trick they used was the whole argument about soy, tofu, and all that stuff was never that it affected your male hormones, right? It's a separate question. It's not that at all. The whole object of people's derision around soy is that it actually mimics estrogen and increases your female hormones. Now, I don't know if that's bad. I don't know. I'm not a scientist on this stuff, right? All I'm pointing out is this ridiculous study lied and said it had nothing to do with testosterone. That's not, who cares? It's a separate question. No one ever even said that, right? No one ever even said that. So right away, it's the same as hydroxychloroquine, well, whatever those things that you can't say on the internet that are drugs that people don't want to talk about. It's all bullshit science, right? I'm not even arguing that those pills that people say were good for COVID are good. I don't think they are. I don't think the one that you can't really say at all on YouTube, or you'll get kicked off, that starts with the I and the ver, you know, Ivor. That one, I don't think it works personally, but I'm not a scientist, right? I'm not a scientist. What I noticed is that none of the studies were actually designed to find out whether it worked or not, right? They are all just obfuscation. They are all just leading people astray. And if you dug deeper into this soy study and wanted to find out who funded it, for example, well, it wouldn't have taken long before you found out that the major producer of soy in America obviously has a huge budget for R&D, right? So it's a follow the money situation. So This has nothing to do with soy. I don't know anything about soy. I don't know anything about it. Whether it causes this or that, I don't know. I'm not here to tell you one way or the other. I'm here to tell you don't ask science to tell you either, because they're not calibrated correctly. Now, the scientific method could get you there, but science, no, it's a scam. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, right? You can't follow it if it doesn't work. And that's one of these situations, right? So here I have a brain, I've got like electricity coming off it, positives and negatives, right? It's the confusion and the stupor that people are in from all these competing narratives. And the argument that I continue to make is that to come together, it'll be the money that brings us together, right? Our relationship with money will help harmonize a lot more of the things that we actually don't have disagreement on, but we think we do, right? Notaire, let me just, asa wa alakel wa alakum asalam. No, I missed it. Anyway, I'm trying to say good morning. Justin says Netscape Navigator was the best, but Marc can kindly fuck off now. Yeah. Look, I'm not here to just say only good things about Andreesen, but let me go through the list. I'm late to the party. I'll have to read that. Now he seems like king of shitcoins through A16Z. Yeah. King, he is. Yeah. Everything is broken. Yeah, the hydroxy lupus medicine. Follow the money. Easiest way to assess incentives. Precisely. Yeah, precisely. No, I'm not trying to make an argument for Marc Andreesen for the Bitcoin Hall of Fame and all that. What I'm trying to say is I think ultimately Marc Andreesen is interested in a better world. And I see a serious mind. And when I saw the list, he didn't say Bitcoin at all, right? So I'm reading that into it. But I'm taking his list, and everyone can tell him, why don't you just say buy Bitcoin? Because his whole 15 white pills here, they're useless, actually, because the answer is Bitcoin. But it's a worthwhile exercise because of the work he's doing, because he's focusing on it. And what I'm trying to show you is literally everything he says is Bitcoin, right? He never said that. I'm saying it, right? So that's the difference. So the first one here, just that's why I do this show. I couldn't do this show unless I had Bitcoin. I wouldn't make sense, right? I wouldn't be able to do a show about psychology. That's kind of what we're talking about here all the time, right? We're not talking about economics. Economics are a part of it, but we're talking about psychology. And that's why I call it the breakup, right? It's not like a list of things that we should talk about. It is literally about reasons why you should end a relationship with money that's not good, right? It's not you, it's USD. That's how I think, right? So in this case, what we're really talking about is the release valve is the harmony that can come from Bitcoin, right? So, but he can't just say buy Bitcoin because he has shit coins to pump. Yes. So Justin, 100%. And what I'm saying is, he can't say that. He's maybe part of that whole financial relationship that doesn't actually allow them to say things because they're looking for profit or whatever. I'm not going to mind reading him. I don't know, right? I don't know what is on his mind, really. What I do know is I think he's on our team. I think he'll help Bitcoin when the time is right, but I could be wrong. And you know and it's so sad, honestly. Yeah, it can be. But again, he's going to come around. He's going to come around. So his list. First of all, the psychological part, right? The next one he has here is white pill number 2. Notwithstanding all the censorship campaigns, information really is more readily available today than ever before, right? So this is white pill number 2, right? So that's what we talk a lot about here. These communication towers are nowhere near as penetrating as the P2P news model that we use on this show, that Bitcoiners have been sharing for a long time without communications infrastructure like media platforms. We've just been doing the basic old-fashioned meetup stuff, right? And suggestions for reading lists. The whole rabbit hole, as I've said many times, the whole rabbit hole is a reading list. It's just shared. It's a reading club, right? It's a reading club. It's like, read that. It's going to be great. And now, even in terms of the actual narrative being covered, just look again at the Twitter files, right? We get all this information out right now about how readily available this information has become just since Elon Musk took over Twitter. And you look at all the debates going on just today, just the news today. So we've been sort of pumping up Barry Weiss's release of the Twitter files. Well, where did that go? We found out that it's because the lawyer, the in-house lawyer at Twitter, James Baker, had come over from the FBI. He was there around all the Russia collusion stories. He's the one who signed. Now, I barely remember the Mueller stuff, right? It was all so boring. This person and this document and who went where. It's like the Hillary emails. Like, it's just the most boring stuff. It's just document management and who did what. But this guy here is one thing I do remember, which was the fake warrants to spy on people. Now, I watched The Wire, right? It was one of the most famous American TV shows ever. You remember the whole point of the show was the process required in order to get a phone tap, right? It wasn't like that in his case. He was getting phone taps or whatever he needed just by, writing a little text message to people, right? Memos, emojis were enough for him to get warrants on people. And he was the one who was signing all of the FISA warrants that allowed for spying on the Trump campaign and others. And so here's the difference in vision. First of all, MSNBC comes out. The Twitter files that Elon Musk helped promote were supposed to be a smoking gun about Democratic election interference at Twitter. Instead, it was another massive flameout. Now, remember, Saturday morning, we predicted the reactions, right? It would be ignore it, laugh at it, attack the people who did it, right? Matt Taibbi, Elon Musk, and not deal with the issues, right? So now, a little harder to get away from the facts because, first of all, with MSNBC was in on it, right? We know that they were in on it. So you can almost discount anything they say because they're not going to criticize themselves, right? So of course they're going with that direction, right? With the new James Baker piece, so it didn't just end there, right? You get Ben Collins, who we bring up all the time, NBC, right? So his whole thing now is that he tried to argue that now it's turned into a situation where we're just worried about random people that are working at Twitter and we're going after them because they need to recast the main villains of some narrative that's being created, right? So random, James Baker's random citizen now? Well, didn't we just have to hear all about him in the Mueller report and all that other stuff, right? Wasn't he just let go of the FBI in order to go to one of these other think tanks, the Brookings Institute or whatever it is? And then he's at Twitter, right? This is infiltration. This is penetration of the FBI into corporate media and other places, right? And now we know, whether you think it's a major problem or not, the bullets are going both ways, right? It's not just mainstream media firing on the people. We can shoot back now. And this is an example of shooting back, right? This is an example of shooting back. And it means, again, that the P2P model for news dissemination is going to remain the most important, right? We can have, through subscription to Matt Taibbi, through Barry Weiss, a personal relationship with newsmakers. And again, it is not an accident. It is not an accident that Elon chose these two people. They're the perfect choices to release this stuff, just the perfect choices. These are independent people who have made audiences on their own. They are truly independent because the people who trust them will pay anything to hear their news. I'm a subscriber. I would pay anything. Even if I don't agree with them, I know at least that it's coming from a place that I don't have to mind read. I don't have to do investigations about where the money came from. I don't have to do any of that stuff. I don't mind disagreeing with Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss. I do it all the time. No big deal, right? But at least I have a sense that the information given to me is not to screw me over. It's not to pull the wool over my eyes. They're just trying to get a win in passing information in a P2P way to their audience. That's their incentive. That's their motivation. The more they do that, the more people like me will subscribe and give them whatever it is, $5 a month or whatever we pay, right? And this whole thing has created a huge backlash, obviously, right? You've got Eric Weinstein, right, who jumps in and says, what are they going on about nothing burgers? Maybe we need to make it clear that mainstream media isn't trusted to hold back nothing burgers from the public. What other nothing burgers has news media held back? Is there a Wuhan Institute nothing burger, an Epstein nothing burger? I want all our nothing burgers, is what he asked, right? When Barry Weiss figured out that it was James Baker, so the story of James Baker now is that he was redacting the files that were given to Matt Taibbi from Elon Musk. He was keeping Elon Musk from seeing FBI involvement. Now, I think they're going to keep some names redacted, right? Now, I think everyone agrees that FBI can have a couple seats at Twitter to look for the child exploitation, right? I don't think anyone would disagree with that, ever. But political files, for sure, for sure. No one invited the FBI to do that. Nobody, right? No one. So information is going both ways, right? That's his white pill number 2. White pill number 3, conflict drives evolutionary improvement of ideas. Memes, right? Are we not the meme lords? Didn't they try to ban one of our memes from mainstream media because it was too effective, calling people NPCs? And it goes on and on. There were meme people taken off the internet for being too effective, especially Bitcoin meme lords. But that's starting to reverse, right? It didn't matter. We had the memes to begin with. The money itself is powered by mimetic dissemination of information. We're all interested in that. The money is part of the meme, right? And having the ability to communicate this way is much faster, much more efficient. And when you see the enemies, like what kind of fiat people out there are communicating mimetically, there aren't any, right? They don't even know what we're talking about. They're worried about their fucking pay from inflation. They're worried that the thing they caused is a big hassle and they're not covered by it. So we don't have to worry too much. Yeah, infiltration is what Steve Paris says. It is an infiltration. Yes, there's no doubt it's infiltration, right? So those are the first 3. The next one here, number 4, right? White pill number 4. Whoops. Wrong one. Out of order. 1 second. Yes. White pill number 4. The truth remains the truth. You can drive out nature with a pitchfork, but she keeps coming back in. He quoted Horace, right? Well, go to Europe. What's going on in Europe today? Europe puts scruples aside, imports record levels of Russian liquid natural gas. So the Greta people are, they don't give a shit anymore. They're cold, right? You can't just turn this into virtue signaling. If you're dealing with the temperature, if you're dealing with the resources you require to eat, for shelter, all of those things, you're not going to get away with, you did it with the wrong style, right? You didn't have the right style when you were cold or warm or whatever, right? So Europe, right away, their eyes are opening. You're going to see all the pensions they saved, all the money that whole boomer generation worked for can be liquidated in a couple of years, a couple of winters of bad energy policy. The whole thing gone, all of it, everything they worked for, their entire pension, all of it. So at a certain point, energy is everything, right? And Bitcoiners, of course, are the most energy literate of any group that's interested in finance or whatever you want to call it. We're just some of the most energy literate people on earth. That's what makes the arguments against Bitcoin mining and that it's bad for the environment. That's how we know it's just a psyop, right? Because we're so energy literate that we can do the math and understand the nature of it all and the costs and benefits of what we've chosen as a system to help coordinate energy. And we'll talk about that more because there's another point it's related to. Number 5, he says, software is really, really, really hard to outlaw. And I'll bring up our friend Michael Saylor here. He was on the PBD podcast yesterday. I can't remember that guy's name, but he's great. He's like a finance guy. And he says, they're committing securities fraud, especially Ethereum. So talking about the contrast between the shitcoin, crypto, and Bitcoin. But here's the thing, right? Here's the thing about, and he gives the thoughts on Ethereum and Ripple, which I agree, they're securities, right? I'm not here to argue the classification is wrong. But let's take one step back here as Bitcoiners and start asking what we're really saying, right? What are we really saying? Are we saying that we don't give a shit about the SEC because it has no concern with Bitcoin? I don't know, right? My desired path on this, and I understand why people can disagree, but my desired path looks a little like this. What Saylor said here, I think, is totally wrong. This past summer, we had a court suggest and adjudicate that all SEC enforcement is a scam and unconstitutional. And that's where I've been for a long time. The reason I'm there is because I believe in common law, which means that there's a separation between the judiciary and the executive branch. They're not the same. The SEC can have an executive branch that passes laws and rules and regulations, fine, right? They're not supposed to have their own in-house court. I've often argued that the reason why SEC law and SEC lawyers are sort of the brain surgeons of law is not because the law itself is any inherently more complicated form of law or anything like that. No, it's because the enforcement board sits within the executive branch and has their own rules of right and wrong, and it's spun so far into the world of specialization that a normal civil court can't understand what the hell they're talking about anymore, right? It's become so specialized, normal courts don't know what is going on. And the court case they had this summer that said all SEC adjudication and enforcement is unconstitutional mentioned that. They said the reason it has become so complicated is because it is a beholden to one agency and specialized knowledge. It should still be accessible to civil normal courts, right? It shouldn't be restricted in complexity to specialized courts. So while I think you still have distinctions between securities and commodities and all that stuff, I'm fine with that, right? We don't need the hyper specialization of the SEC. Furthermore, the SEC is a political actor. They only pick the ones they're not happy with, and they let all kinds of other things go, right? So leaning on the SEC here is the wrong way, right? The idea that we can overrun the SEC with illegal activities, stuff like on Ethereum, stuff like on these other chains, right? I think it's a good thing. I want the whole crypto scene to be the thing that sinks Wall Street. We gotta grow it bigger, right? We gotta get it bigger. FTX might have come close. We're seeing the dominoes fall, but Bitcoiners are here not to live next to a Wall Street that is the same as it always was, except they trade Bitcoin and all of the financial engineers are still in their seats and you need an IQ of 140 even to get involved in Bitcoin trading or whatever, right? We're not interested in that world. We're interested in stopping the flow of the best and brightest to Wall Street to trade shitcoins like Ethereum and think it's a job, right? One of the best ways to do that is to keep growing the scam bigger, so that the law can't outrun it, so that in the end, the thing topples together, right? And I think that's what he's getting at here, that software is hard to make illegal, and eventually we are going to create the biggest fake scam bubble in the world, and Wall Street's going to buy that crypto shit and die, right? It's a poison pill, and I don't have a problem with that. Like, I don't, you know, if all the people in FTX, like the Sequoias, right, and all these folks, we've talked about it a lot on the show. Of course I feel for the people who had, you know, half a Bitcoin stored on FTX, but hey, they were warned 1,000 million times. This isn't kindergarten. We're not here for wishes and rainbows, right? They were warned 1,000,000 times. They better learn, because in the future there's no opportunity to be warned anymore, right? And the best way to learn is to get burned. And the best way to get burned is with the shitcoins and the failure of the SEC. Right now, I'm gonna continue to do my part to tell people, don't bother, stupid, buy Bitcoin, right? But people, they don't listen, right? They don't listen. The best way is for them to learn, and it'll be the same for the Wall Street folks. So I'm not here to give a moral judgment on Ethereum. I don't give a shit that it's illegal for the SEC, and where is the SEC adjudicating? The SEC adjudication is itself unconstitutional, right? So there you go. Sailor had a pretty good, it was a good interview. Yeah, and I'm only just taking this one little example out, right? I don't agree with this thing that they're all securities and wait for the SEC to deal with it and they're gonna get them, right? I don't want that. I want the SEC to be bewildered, to be behind, to be complaining like the ECB, oh, we don't have enough staff, where's our money, right? And then more cases about how it's unconstitutional. That's where we gotta go, right? Fill them with litigation, fill them with bullshit, right? Give them more cases. If they think one ICO is no good, give them 10,000, right? And then We'll see what happens. Right now, it's not consumer protection stuff that people will lose this way. Right, people will lose. That's why Bitcoiners do what they do. That's why I do what I do on this show. Right, we're here for the people who are ready to understand that you need a much lower IQ to participate in the financial system than anyone ever told you needed. And it's important that, it's important that the SEC fails, I guess is what it comes down to. It's important that it fails. I don't want the SEC to be successful in any instance, right? I want them to be the complete failures they are. And if that means that the Ethereum scam bubble can grow a little bigger, I don't care, right? If they get blamed for the scam bubble being destroyed in another year or two, that's good for us. That's how I see it, right? I could be wrong. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's where my instincts are. So, but the interview with Saylor was great. There you go. Yeah, you're probably right. It'll just keep getting bigger every 4-year cycle. Muslim Bitcoiner, Tornado Cash incident showed that code can be a form of speech that can be censored. Indeed, Muslim Bitcoiner, you bring up a good point, right? You do bring up a good point, that they arrested the Tornado Cash guy just for writing the code, not for actually doing the thing, right? And that's a problem. We got to spring that guy for sure. This is ridiculous, right? But that it happened will bring more disrepute onto the system itself, which is also good, right? That's the system losing as far as I can tell. That's the system not keeping up. So while it sucks, I wouldn't want to be him in the position he's in now at all, and I don't think it's great. But casualties of wars, guys. This is the fog of war. We are in a tough time. This is a POW as far as I'm concerned. He's a POW at this point, and we'll get him back. We're not going to leave anyone behind. I'll put my POW flag up for that guy any day, right? I don't know if non-Americans know this, but really patriotic Americans will put up a POW flag next to their American flag, and it's pretty popular and common out there. You see them in parks a lot. I'd say like 10% of flags in the United States. Let's say 30% of houses have a nice flag situation outside of their house in America. 10% of those, so maybe 3% in America, 3% of American houses or yards and stuff and parks and whatever will have one of these POW flags. And it's just blackface, just to remember all the POWs, all the Americans that are not home in America and that are somewhere rotting, right? And I don't think it's restricted to Americans, the spirit of the POW thing. So, it's got a lot of benefits. So there you go, court cases. So the next one he's got, his next white pill number 6. This one's great. The corrupt elites are so bad, they're even bad at being elites. I had to put Trudeau there. I had to put him there, right? I don't think Trudeau, when this is all over, can even come back to Canada. I think he's going to have to live abroad. I do. Canadians they have this reputation of being nice and peaceful, but it's not that true. We can be as jerky and ridiculous as anyone. And I just can't imagine once he's out of that office, he's going to be able to go anywhere in this country. I can't imagine it. There'll never be a day where he is respected again. I can't imagine it. I think the hatred for him is going to be one of those rare instances that just persists. And so I predicted when he first took power, because when I was working in the Senate in Canada, his office was across the hall from me. I see him all the time. And his brother is actually a huge Bitcoiner and was helping me on the study. So there would be interactions, because his brother would be in the office and stuff like that. And, I'd come from Montreal and I had some friends whose older brothers went to school with him. So I'd seen him around over the years, right? I never thought very highly of him, always thought he was a jerk, a real jerk, actually. And way before he was involved in politics. But my prediction from the moment he got involved, I said it would be such a failure. He would win. I predicted he would be the prime minister, but he would be such a failure that he risked ending all liberal politics forever. He would be the poster child for the stupidity and the excess of this whole generation of the fiat world. And I think I'm on schedule. I think my prediction will be borne out. I think he will become the poster child for the failure of clown world. He is the chief clown of clown world, not in power, just in spectacle and stupidity and ridiculousness. So I have every reason to believe he is going to remain a symbol of ridiculousness, and that would be great, right? What about this? Just how bad the elites are, right? Just how bad the elites are. Look at this Qatar story, right? Look at this Qatar story. Everyone, the German team, don't talk about gay people and gay people in Qatar. Qatar warned the whole world. This is a soccer tournament. This is not a booze fest. There's going to be no booze, and you keep the man-woman stuff in your country. This is a soccer tournament, right? So Germany, England, all these countries do the protests. So what ends up happening is, of course, Qatar mocks Germany. Germany's out of the tournament quickly. They said, wow, you should have thought about soccer, right? It's other stuff. And so all of this mocking, well, how could they get away with being so rude and no one's really reacting? Well, here's what it is. The manner in which Qatar called Germany's bluff makes for a sobering reminder. This is from Doomberg. A sobering reminder of the trade-offs being made by those loath to get serious about energy, right? So because they're so stupid and they do not understand the energy file whatsoever, they think they believed they could make a teenage girl happy. The whole energy policy is oriented on making a teenage girl happy. And let's make this teenage girl happy, and then we'll be good, right? Once she starts crying, once she doesn't blame us for ruining her childhood, we'll all be good, right? That's what they went with, right? A single teenage girl. And they listened to her. And okay, if they're going to be that unserious, right? And guess what? She's not happy, right? She's still fucking miserable. She's now complaining that it's capitalism. It had nothing to do with the energy, I guess. It's all capitalism, right? So what are they going to go full communist now in Europe to make the teenage, not even a teenager anymore, but are they going to try and make her happy again? Is that the whole point of policy over there, right? We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, Cuba. So he will live in exile in Cuba. I think so. I'm not kidding, guys. I'm not kidding. Like, I can't imagine a world. I just can't. His dad, I used to see his dad around in the 90s in Quebec. And his dad was an asshole. And he lived a normal life. He would walk around the city in a fucking cape. He'd wear a cape all the time, like a spectacle, right? And he would walk between his law office and his home, where Justin lived, which was not far from my school. So I could see him. It's on a hill, right? So my school's at the bottom of the hill. People come down. The law office is at the bottom. He'd go back and forth. You'd see him. He'd be driving by. He'd be in his fucking cape and all that. But he's a super asshole, and you couldn't fuck with him because he was quick to scream and yell, and he was mean, right? And in a not a negative way necessarily. Like, he was not going out to get people on his own or whatever. But you could just tell that he was a little guy. But you could tell he was fine on his own. Justin ain't that guy, right? He's not that guy. And people are going to be real. I mean, they're not going to be nice to him. But Canadians can be weak too, and they might not do anything. So maybe I'm wrong. All right. So white pill number 7. Global arbitrage, right? Well, we know all about that in Bitcoin. Right, we know all about that. We're running around the world trying not to give any taxes to any of these entities. This is definitely tactical, definitely small-scale war maneuvers. I definitely look at funding the war machine and the political entities totally differently and absolutely strategically. My goal is to give them the least amount possible and not get into trouble for the time being, right? For the time being. So I'm not alone in this quest. Lots of people are. Where I am here, I am in the next couple of years trying to set up a situation where Canadians in particular can copy me. They can do the arbitrage across borders and greatly diminish the tax bill, avoid it altogether in Canada, because that's one country we got to starve of all revenue. I continue to think that when Bitcoin starts, when all the currencies collapse into one, if you believe in dollar milkshake, which I do, it means that the relative nature of fiat money will go away, in the sense that right now it's true that there is only one fiat currency, it's the US dollar, and all other fiat currencies gain value relative to the dollar. So the dollar is the measuring stick by which you can tell the value of another currency, right? There's not some arbitrary third thing that they're measured against. All will be measured against Bitcoin in the future, but today these coins are still measured relative to the US dollar. So as the US dollar gets so much stronger in this liquidity absorbing environment that we're in, where people are arbitraging US monetary policy versus other countries that can't keep up, right? Korea's already complaining, oh, America, you're raising interest rates too fast. If Canada ends up complaining about the same thing, and I did the math during the George Soros thing, right? What it cost George Soros to knock the pound out. Here's the rough figures. It was $50 billion that they had in the coffers of the Bank of England. He used a $10 billion short, which other people joined in on. The $10 billion short grew big enough that they needed the $50 billion, all of the money in reserves to fight it, and they had to raise interest rates 500%, 500 basis points, 5% in one day. That's what they call breaking the Bank of England. So that happened in one day. When Trudeau made me a terrorist and was going into the bank accounts and all that shit, I said, well, what's it going to take to knock this motherfucker out, right? And I did the math, and I said, well, they've got $50 billion in the bank. They can't raise interest rates 5%, so this is pretty simple, actually, right? One punch and that sucker goes down. I mean, it gets down on the mat. It ain't getting up. And I continue to think of all the heavyweight practice bouts that Bitcoin could take before it starts really going for the title. Canada is a great warm-up. It's a great warm-up fight, right? We can see what kind of a punch we pack when we knock that son of a bitch out. And it's gonna happen, right? It's gonna happen. So there's another one. The number 8 is capitalism absorbs dissent and sells it back to us as a luxury consumer good. You can kind of see that in you can kind of see that in you can kind of see that in some of the lifestyle stuff around Bitcoin. We'll get into more of that later, but what you have is, you know, things like you know, even crypto, that whole spiel I just said about crypto, right? It's probably one of the best ways to liquidate Wall Street, to tell them that all this stupid shit is worth something, and they think it's great, right? How much money did normies spend on these ridiculous NFTs that are all just canceling out wealth, right? And that's not a bad thing, right? That's not a bad thing for their own greed to be wasted on useless baubles, which takes away their munitions to fight us eventually. I think is a win-win for us, right? So there you go. Number 9 is the public's confidence in incumbent American institutions is converging on the truth. What does he mean by that? Well, he means that the reputation of Congress is an all-time low, the president is at an all-time low, energy policy is an all-time low, education at an all-time low. All institutions are losing double-digit approval ratings in the past 2 or 3 years, really just since COVID, right? Science, finished. Healthcare, done. I mean, it all went from like 60% approval to like 30, right? And so it's a big change, right? A big change. COVID did more to radicalize people against the capacity to lie, the capacity to be poorly organized, and us having to eat, you know, normal people having to eat the ramifications of that is now, you know, pretty out there. So that's another one. His next one, this is where things get really interesting, right? This is where things get really, really interesting. His next one is white pill number 10. Today's best young entrepreneurs seem much better than their predecessors from the prior 30 years, him included, right? I think he's saying him included. Now let's look at the 2 Jacks, right? The 2 Jacks. They were on stage 2 days ago in Africa. Jack Mallers and Jack Dorsey, right? The two jacks of Bitcoin entrepreneurship. What were they doing in Africa 2 days ago? Talking about a new payments architecture that's global in nature, so Strike being there and some features that were added, right? Big news, access to all of these African people. But the bigger news was Jack Dorsey's announcement of $2 million investment into Gridless. What's Gridless? It's a decentralized approach to energy finance. It's not about, oh, let's go find some shitty little energy thing that no one's using, stranded energy, and then we'll mine some Bitcoin and it'll be great. That's not what they're doing. They're talking about financing energy infrastructure using Bitcoin in order to bring energy to the people, which is what we talk about on this show all the time. They're going to use small scale hydro, which is perfect, right? Perfect. So contrast that right now with what's going on in North Carolina, right? 40,000 people sabotaged the centralized system, the centralized grid, right? The announcement that Jack Dorsey had puts Bitcoin at the center of decentralized grids. It's a major difference, right? Major difference. When we figure that out, game over. Game over. And it's happening now. We're going to do it in America. We're going to do it all across the continent. We're going to own all the small modular nuclear reactors. We're going to be the main source of finance and coordination of small-scale decentralized grid architecture. It's us. It's us. And in the same way that Andreesen mentions, this generation of entrepreneurs are better than his generation of entrepreneurs, he's admitting the truth. They're involved in the shitcoin business. They still sort of, I guess, count their wealth in dollars, and they want more wealth, right? These guys, doesn't look like that's what they're doing, right? Doesn't look like that's what they're doing. So this should continue, right? This should continue. White pill number 11, action reaction, right? Newtonian third law. We talk about it a lot in relation to Bitcoin. There's some great stories here, right? And they start with the obvious, right? They start with the obvious. You can't pump massive bubbles in real estate and all these other industries without eventually paying a price. So Blackstone, we mentioned the other day on this show, they're doing a Genesis, Gemini, you can't get your money out, right? They stopped redemptions on their real estate fund a few days ago. Well, today there's another one stopping, right? That one was a $68 billion fund, I guess. There's another one now in private credit, right? The BCRED, 23 billion. Total had net assets of 23 billion and total assets of 50 billion. Redemption's over, right? This is the capacity and the inability to account for and count, just the inability to count and to know liabilities, assets. It's the FTX story on a much larger scale, like trillions, not the little, $10 billion where to go FTX situation. This is way larger, way larger. And they're not the only one. Starwood, like Blackstone, another real estate redemption fund, another big real estate fund stopping redemptions. Right? So Starwood, Blackstone 2 times. I don't see this stopping. This is action reaction. They fucked the whole system. It's done, right? They fucked the whole system and it's done, right? What about the other biggest one here, right? And Muslim Bitcoiner can this if he's covering it. This is crazy. The Iranians going for Trudeau, right? The Iranians this morning going full Justin Trudeau, what he did to me and other Canadians. The women now in Iran who don't wear the hijab, bank account freeze. He did the Trudeau thing. They're going to freeze the fucking bank accounts of no hijabi women in Iran. Well, he just created how many Bitcoiners? I mean, we got to welcome these beautiful Iranian women to Bitcoin, hijab and all. They get to do whatever the hell they want, right? We don't give a shit. We want the ones with the hijab and the ones without the hijab. But the idea that they're going to blacklist a bunch of women for not agreeing politically, I mean, the reason why things are going the way they are in Iran towards a positive, I think, outcome is because the women are involved. It's what's different this time. as I understand, the way things work in Iran is, and this is from Iranian friends that I have, they've all sort of expressed the same thing, that outwardly in public, the men run society, right? We all see that and understand it, the clerics and all these folks, the Khomeinis and the Khomeinis or whoever they are, the Ayatollahs, right? But in the house, the women run the show. So every family, the mother is much more powerful than the father when it comes to what's going on in the home. And apparently that's what's been energized in this revolution, is the women who run the home are running all of this, all of the thought, and they're the ones pushing. So now they're going to blacklist them and do what they did in Canada. Good luck with that, Iran. Good luck. We love it. I mean, do it. Keep it. Go. We want the Bitcoiners. So do what you got to do, Iran. If you think that's smart, great. I think it's great for us. Not so great for you, but if you think that is the way to go, go. You know, what are we going to say? This one's the best. This one's so good. This is so good. He quoted Lenin, Vladimir Lenin, but so will I. He says, the worse, the better. That's a Lenin quote, right? And that says white pill number 12. Well, did you know that SBF just hired Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyer? That's a whole nother cycle. It's amazing. He hired SBF. Now Carolyn's in the mix. You know, they were schlonking, the two of them, right? And but now they're not agreeing. So he went on his media thing and said all kinds of stuff, but it looks like he's blaming her. If you read between the lines legally, the culpability's on her. So she didn't stay in Hong Kong because, and she is now in New York, and everyone's speculating the only reason she left a non-extraditable jurisdiction to come to America is because she's going to sing against SBF. So we get the Ghislaine Maxwell lawyer, we get the fight. This is going to be great. I mean, who knows what they're going to find, right? I think it can get us back to Ghislaine. I do. I think somehow this SBF story is going to get back to Ghislaine, and we're going to know about Ghislaine and all the jizz. We're going to find out, right, what's going on. So Ghislaine, there you go. Number 13. This is a little crazy, right? This is a little crazy, but it's true. White pill number 13. Oh, no, that's not it. I'll get to that one in a second. And this one here. Let me just look at my notes. Where did it go? He's got 16. I did miss one. Okay. He did, in this version of 1984, the telescreens broadcast both ways. I didn't put a news story for that one. I think it just means that it's a little bit like, I don't know, I guess I do have one. It's the Hunter Biden story, right? In the sense that, and I mean this in a way that's a little different, I think, than most people will take it. You know, we talk about privacy, and there was a comment, I can't remember which one of you made it, that it's asymmetric, that the government knows more about us, and that privacy is needed to rebalance things between government and people. That's one valid way it could go. And if it ended up that way, I'd be fine. I don't think it's going to go that way. I think it's going to go more like what we saw with the nuclear security trans person, right? Now, when that person was hired, I said, this is perfect, because this is the way I think it's going to head. I just want this person to be good at nuclear waste management. It turns out they're not. They stole a bag and are not a serious person, luggage and blah, 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 right? But so forget for a second that part of it. What I liked about the character, being open about their clothing and sexual choices and all that, is because I predict it's going to be a two-way street as far as to get the asymmetry down. As much as they know about people, we're going to start knowing more about them. So the Hunter Biden thing, I think, is positive, really positive, that we now have a better idea of the crack smoking nature of a lot of elites. And we have a chance now to not try to make these people live up to ideas that are useless and it's just about narrative, and like the president's son has to act in a certain way. Well, does he? What difference does it make, right? I don't mind that Hunter is a crack smoker and all the other stuff. I mean, he's a deadbeat dad. That sucks, but it's not it's not like it doesn't affect me. It doesn't change my Bitcoin stack. Like, I don't care, right? There's no effect on my life. Now, if there's blackmail and all that, of course, it's a major problem. So I'm not trying to give Hunter a pass. I just mean the aspect of knowing these, dirty, gross things is the way it's going to head, right? It is both ways. One of the ways that we're going to respond to the lack of privacy on our ends is to not allow the people in power to have any privacy either, right? So that's another way to deal with it, and I think that's where it's going to go. So there you go. 13. This one's will be a little tough to hear, but we got to talk about it. And it is Kanye, right? Kanye West. Ye, who I still think is a viable presidential candidate. I think the campaign is strong. When I look at the track record so far, what do I see? I see someone who is targeting the most crazy things you can say and is getting a lot of attention and energy for it. I think he's going to change his ideas. I think right now it's about attention, and because the first step in persuasion is attention, right? You've got to get the energy, and you can see how weak Trump looks now because he's not able to do that anymore, right? He's not able to focus the attention like he did 4 years ago. And he can say the dumbest shit now, like, I'm going to get rid of the Constitution, and it doesn't work. It doesn't freak people out. It just turns people off of him, right? Because the attention isn't there. Kanye and Elon have all the attention right now. All the energy is focused on them. Everyone talking about them. People still saying, "Oh my God, Kanye!" Right now, it's ugly, the stuff he says, but there is a humor to it as well, right? There's a humor to it. We can't deny that there's a way to see everything he's doing as pretty hilarious, right? I've gone back and watched the Alex Jones thing, and I can't stop laughing when I see it now, right? The first time you see it, you're like, oh my God, what is going on here? You watch it again and you start seeing it for what it is. It's a type of comedy. And I thought, when you look at it again, it might be the most sophisticated art I've ever seen in my life. It might be, as ugly as it is, right? It might be the most sophisticated art you have ever seen, ever. Dave Chappelle did something very similar when he did the joke on Saturday Night Live, and he said, if it's a bunch of black people, it's a gang. If it's a bunch of Muslims, they're terrorists. But if it's a bunch of Jews, it's a coincidence, right? So that's the type of art I'm talking about. And this is the white pill that Marc Andreesen offers. Every day, 2 lists get longer. The things you believe you can't say, and the things you don't believe but must say. And I think Kanye's doing that, right? They talk about the Overton window, Ali Alexander. If you really want the best insight into the Kanye InfoWars interview, watch the pre-game to it, right? Watch when they get ready to go on before Kanye puts the mask on, and listen to Ali Alexander talk about it. A Bitcoiner, by the way. Listen to Ali Alexander's explanation, right? It's about the Overton window. It's about pushing. It's about destabilizing the critics, right? This was not, now, you can see mental illness if you'd like, right? But I see it as just a small smidgen. The rest is art. The rest is art, right? Now, the mental illness is baked in. He's told you he has it. He told you that's what he's got. You don't have to mind read him, right? That's what he said. And he told you not to like him, right? That's part of the show. The part of the show is to say things that are so unpalatable in order to change our understanding of what we can and can't say. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm seeing, right? So in some ways, you could say all these things that everyone else is saying about Kanye, and he's terrible, and da-da-da-da. And look, believe what he's saying. He's telling you to believe him, right? He's telling you to believe him. But at the same time, if you want to have a predictive model about where it's headed, you don't need to mind read him. You just have to look at the track record and say, well, he's done very similar things before, and the track record suggests he's always going for the most blasphemous thing. He's just found a new level of blasphemy that we were not prepared for before. And this is being done consciously if you listen to the stuff from there. So Next, that was white pill number 14. White pill number 15. They lie to us. We know they're lying. We know they know we know they're lying, but keep lying to us, and we keep pretending to believe them. Right? It's that quote. This was from the communist times. This is like a quote from Soviet Union. Then Marc Andreesen says, but they are still lying. Look at this chat GPT thing, right? Look at the chat GPT thing. I've been, my whole book, right? My whole book about eyeballs, AI balls, is about a future where the only interface we have with technology are AI, and they help us manage our Bitcoin. That's it. That's all the technology we need is some Bitcoin, some AI, and that's it. That's the interface, right? That is their interface with reality, is the AI and Bitcoin and people, right? We have a market for time and money, and that's it. And the AI help us navigate the time markets. And now with the chat GPT thing, you're seeing it more and more. I read online, I read here yesterday, and on the Bitcoin Magazine show at 1, the story about how the trillions of dollars the BIS said are missing, the Bank of International Settlements say there's $80 trillion missing from pension funds and other folks. It's not sovereign debt, it's just leveraged FTX type garbage, and they can't find 80 trillion. So I asked, I said, well, someone asked, and I read it here, right? But this is what I foresee happening. You ask the AI, ask your eyeball, what's going on? What does this mean? And the eyeball was clear, right? We're seeing it more and more. We saw people do it with the IMF. What about the IMF? According to the AI, it's a scam. It's a scam, right? So, we have the ability now to protect ourselves from fake news by having an AI friend. And I think that's going to continue, right? So, and finally, the best one. This is white pill number 16. And he says here, so, those lawn signs, in this house, we believe Black Lives Matter and blah, blah, blah. Science is real and love is love and whatever. If you don't know about the lawn signs, right? The people with the POW flag don't put the sign up in general. These are separate houses, right? But you'll see more of these flags, probably more of these lawn signs, we believe in all that stuff than you will. No, maybe not. They're about even, right? They're about even. So he put up a different version of this. And he says, in this house, we believe the green grocer lives here. And it just goes, he's beyond reproach. He's a good citizen, wants to feed his community. Get the fuck out of here and don't criticize him, right? And isn't that the case, right? We know in Bitcoin, we know about diet, we know about food. We try to spread great information about the corruption of our food supply, the tainted food that's being sold to people, all with profits in mind. Here's the World Economic Forum from just recently. This is so stupid it could be fake news. So I'm going to warn you right now that I only like 50% believe I'm not getting duped when I'm reading this to you, right? I almost can't believe it's real, but it's real. I think it's real, but I could turn out that I've disseminated fake news because it's so perfect. It's hard to tell. The comedy and the real world have blended into one, so I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I tried my best to figure it out. I didn't have much time after when I found it to when I went on. So this is actually from the WEF, from the World Economic Forum. What will our diets look like in 2030? All right, number 1. You're gonna love this, guys. Seed oils. Oils like canola are more sustainable, plus reduce levels of toxic testosterone. Damn. They reduce toxic testosterone. Thank you, World Economic Forum. Micro livestock. 2/3 of our protein needs will come from micro livestock like cockroaches, flies, and worms. Cool. That's great. Intermittent fasting. I agree with that one. That's why I think it's real. Like they say, intermittent fasting. We will eat 40% less food in 2030 to meet our net zero. Well, that's not intermittent fasting. So I think they've confused intermittent fasting. So this is a bit ridiculous. So I intermittent fast, but I don't eat less calories because I intermittent fast. They say they're gonna eat 40% less. All right. This is good for our waistlines and good for the planet. You can eat nothing and be happy. Oh no, this must be fake. It's fake. It can't be real. It can't be real. It can't be real. I'm reading you fake news, guys. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, all right. Yeah, Cedars lower your testosterone, be a good little worker bee. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. They conflated intermittent fasting with centralized starvation. It's hard to tell satire. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Steve. I can't tell the satire. So that it makes me say you can eat nothing and be happy. Makes me say it's fake. But look, I mean, here I'll show you what I got. I'll show you what I got. That's what it was. That's what I printed. And it says source here, but I mean, look, I mean, it could be wrong. Oh, I wanted to mention there was that one other story before we go. This one's great. Did you hear they tried to do a coup in Germany last night? This is hilarious. The German Prince Heinrich the 13th, Rus of Greiss, was arrested Wednesday morning along with 24 suspected on planning a coup d'etat in Germany. There's 3,000 police out to get these guys. What the fuck's going on in Germany? Yeah, it must be fake news, Steve. It's got to be fake news. Sorry I read it, guys. But, you know, based on a true story. Based on a true story. All right, team. I went over today. Peace. See ya.